Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer with our content genius, Michael Rivers, behind the camera and behind all of our episodes except for this one. This is a part 2 reacting to the defense opening in YNW Melly. But before we get to that, this episode is brought to you by eSign.com, a very effective way to remotely do business. For example, if your grandma's hiding out in your basement because she's on the run, and, you know, you love your grandma, you don't want to turn her in, but she needs a lawyer, and she needs something negotiated ahead of time. So you just call the lawyer, you e-sign the documents, you get her all set up, and then you turn her in. eSign.com, a very effective way to remotely do business. If it's not e-sign, no one signs. I use it all the time when my client is either out of town or can't come into the office. You can execute a business deal really quick. eSign.com, very effective way to remotely do business. Let's just get right into this because I haven't seen this and I'm really anxious to see the defense side of things.
Prosecutors are given great power, endless resources to perform their mission of pursuing justice. But that's not what occurred here. What they will bring you is a case that is riddled with reasonable doubt, that is founded on an incompetent and incomplete investigation, and the exercise of poor judgment at every turn.
In other words, they rush to judgment. So attacking the quality of the investigation is a very standard and old-time tactic used by the defense.
The state cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt the allegations that they have made.
Now, if you remember in part 1 where we reacted to the prosecution's opening, they never said, they had any evidence that Melly held a gun, Melly fired a single shot. They just basically laid out a circumstantial case.
And there is a reason for that. You recall Ms. Bradley, some of you may recall, during jury selection, going to great lengths to let you know that she does not have to prove motive. And she's right about that. The law doesn't require her to prove motive.
But it is a question in the back of a juror's mind. You want to know, why would somebody do this? Just like why would somebody not do it?
But you know what does require motive? A young man to wake up one day and decide that he's going to kill 2 of his best friends. Best friends that he grew up with, best friends that he hangs out with, best friends who he lives with.
This is more like a closing argument. I mean, you're not supposed to argue. He's kind of giving you, not the evidence will show, but this is why this shouldn't have happened.
Best friends whose careers he was trying to launch alongside his own. They have no reason for why he would do this, because there is no reason. And if there's no reason, it doesn't make sense. And if after 4 years of investigation, the state comes and says, hey, he killed 2 of his friends, his best friends, and you're wondering why, and their answer is, I don't know.
The prosecution probably could object right here, but you don't want to object too much. But this is kind of argument.
That's the first indication that they're just guessing and don't know what they're talking. And that, ladies and gentlemen, by itself is reasonable doubt. Why he would commit such a heinous crime against his own 2 best friends for no reason.
Now, motive isn't one of the elements, but juries do like to have things explained to them. And my understanding that this was over $200,000, but I'm not sure if that's the case or not.
What happened here is that the lead detective, Detective Moretti, saw a video of Mr. Demons getting into a car 40 plus minutes before bodies were found in that car. And then he discovered that Mr. Demons was a rising star. And from that point on, he decided he's the only person that could have committed this crime. Because if you're involved in prosecuting a star, you become a star. This was his big break. And he had tunnel vision, and he zeroed in on this person, this young man, as the only...
Those kind of character assassinations really get under the skin of law enforcement. So when that guy gets up to testify, he knows what this is all about already.
The only possible perpetrator of that crime, to the exclusion of all other leads and evidence. There's a difference between cases that are investigated and cases that are fabricated.
One of the things you have to make the leap, if you buy the defense, is that an officer is going to commit, multiple felonies in order to get his big break, as he puts it.
When a case is investigated, the state uses all its resources, its investigators, its experts, and all its energy to identify leads and run them to ground. When a case is fabricated, first a target is chosen, and then the state uses all its resources, its investigators, its experts, and its energy to run that target into the ground. That's what...
This is all argument. I mean, it's kind of crazy that we haven't heard a single objection by the prosecution at this point. But that's good.
Occurred here, and there's a reason why I say that. There are a number of leads that you will discover that were identified by the officers but were either completely ignored or given short shrift.
That's an alternative perpetrator theory of a case. And that can be powerful if you can show that somebody else may have done this.
I'm going to let you know, run through a few of them by way of example. Start with the most obvious one. Cortland Henry.
Ooh, he started out with Mr. Henry, the snitch. Oh, and that's the thing. It could have been him. Could have been, And so he's gonna point the finger at YNW Portland. I knew this was gonna happen all along. Way back when we first reacted to this. It's fun to know that you're right once in a while.
Ms. Bradley started her opening statement by describing some of the lies that he told, as though to impute them to Mr. Demons. Those were not Mr. Demons' lies. Those were his lies.
Henry and Demons are no longer friends.
Cortland Henry shows up at Memorial Hospital, Miramar. You don't see him sitting there, but where you will see him sitting is in the driver's seat of a car with two dead bodies, a car riddled with bullets. And when he shows up with a change of clothing, change of shirt.
So the defense is going after Henry. Not surprising at all. Not in the least. And that's hanging the jacket on Portland or Cortland Henry. That's the logical thing to do here.
Gunpowder residue on his hands, evidencing that he had discharged a firearm. And he lies.
So this is going to come down all to a credibility determination. This whole case will come down to credibility determination of Cortland Henry, which begs the question: will Melly testify? Will Melly testify? They don't have to decide that until the very last minute. But there is so much that he can't answer for. And he didn't give a statement. So it'd be a real big gamble for him to testify.
He lies about where the incident occurred. He lies about how it occurred. And he lies about not having a phone. I think it was Miss Bradley herself who said, everybody has a phone in his pocket, not Cortland Henry. There were 3 phones in that car. There were 3 people in that car.
Where's that jacket going? It's going right on Cortland Henry.
So they take him at his word, despite suspicious circumstances, and they let him go on his way. They soon discover that he's lying about the location of this incident, and they went back to him, and they label him a victim. And they said, we know you're scared. Tell us what happened.
See, this is effective. I think this is kind of has you thinking, oh my gosh, we got a case here. Who did it? Was it Henry or was it Melly or combination of the two? So now you're sitting in the. This is why I like homicides, because it's a whodunit as opposed to a DUI. Yeah, I was drinking. Yeah, I was driving. Yeah, I got pulled over. I was drunk. They're boring. This is a story.
He lies to them again. They let him go. And they know where he went. They know the location that he went. They know the house that he went to right after. And any investigator worth his salt would have thought to maybe execute a search warrant on that location.
A search warrant on the alternative perpetrator? We think some fuckery is afoot.
To see if you find any bloody clothes, any DNA, any blood, a weapon maybe. You guys are probably familiar with the series First 48. That's founded on the proposition that if you botch an investigation within the first 48 hours, you've pretty much botched it for good. It's 48 months plus later. They still haven't served a search warrant on that location. Why?
That is strange, because if Henry had anything to do with this whatsoever, and he probably did, well, he did because he's charged, why wouldn't they execute that search warrant? Why wouldn't they confirm some of the things he said? Maybe the firearms there. Maybe his clothes are bloody that are there.
Moretti already had his man. What's the point of an investigation? To find out what happened. He's using all his resources to try and prove what he has already concluded did happen. So, after Cortland Henry, lead number 2, a gentleman named Montrell Roll, and his sister, Nia Hewitt.
This is an interesting tack, because now they have another person that may be an alternative perpetrator. Sort of sounds like the defense doesn't know what they're talking about in a sense, or could. I'm not saying it does, but it could. And if you put a bunch of people up there, it detracts from the power of the alternative, Henry being the shooter.
Who are they? Well, another police department came into possession of jail calls between those two that occurred within 3 days after the murders, and discussed what they describe as intimate details of the murders. Intimate details means details that are not in the public domain. So 3 days after, these two people are discussing the details of a murder.
And is it because they talked to Melly?
They go out and interview Miss Hewitt. They don't interview Mr. Roll. And they ask her, well...
The reason they didn't interview Rowe is because he had a lawyer, and when you have a lawyer, the prosecution can't just go interview your client.
How did you know all these intimate details? Oh, I heard it, something to the effect of I heard word on the street. Doesn't say when she heard it. Doesn't say who she heard it from. Case closed. They move on. That's lead number 2. That was ignored. Then there's Robert Coburn. Who is he? He is a gentleman that owns a social media account by the name of Backwards. This social media account, almost immediately, within days after these murders, posts this message: LOL, we killed 2 of your niggas. Oh, really? Took him 7 months to go and talk to Mr. Coburn.
So that could mean a number of things. It could mean that you're part of the gang and you didn't actually do it, but you know about it. Or it could mean that you and somebody else did this. But there's got to be something to back it up. You can't just admit to a crime, and it's called corpus delicti. You can't just admit to a crime and then they just believe that you did it. You got to have some corroboration that you did something.
The owner of this account that posts what amounts to an unequivocal confession to involvement in that murder, in those murders. 7 months. Why? Moretti already had his guy. And when they go and talk to Mr. Coburn, what does he say? He said, oh, I created that account and I sold it for $20 to somebody else. Who'd you sell it to? Oh, I can't remember. Were you at the murder scene? No. Did you do it? No. Case closed. That's it. No more investigation. It would occur to a reasonable person, let alone a seasoned investigator acting in good faith.
See, one of the things about a statement like that, it is what it's worth, right? This is a very high-profile case. It's you're going to have all kinds of people commenting, and a simple comment on social media, so it's not that powerful. The stuff that he said about Henry was a lot more powerful, and so when you dilute your message on the one person who was there, and you know he was there because he said he was there, and he lied about it. I think it loses some efficacy if you don't focus solely on that person, but if you, instead of a shotgun approach.
Why would somebody buy an Instagram account when you can create one for free on your own?
Why would somebody do that when you think about it? Is it because, they all of a sudden got a shit ton of followers because of that comment? Or that it is a good question.
If not to hide your identity. And if somebody goes to the trouble of buying an Instagram account to hide their identity and then confesses to a murder that you're investigating, maybe you ought to go and figure out who that person is and talk to them. And maybe there is no such person. Maybe it was not sold. Why would somebody create an Instagram account and sell it?
Now keep in mind, remember what the prosecution said? They searched the area where they were. And there wasn't anybody else's cell phone hits in that area. It's a desolate area.
For $20. And if he's in the business of doing that, that's of interest. And how would anybody know to go to him to buy an Instagram account?
I don't like criticizing another lawyer, another defense lawyer, but I mean, this is almost like who gives a shit? You know what I mean? I mean, he probably can establish that he was someplace else, but this is just throwing shit up on the wall and see what sticks.
These are all unanswered questions. No investigation. Case closed. Let's move on. David Hedgepath, Who is he, you might wonder? He had a Twitter account called Crucial Almighty. He posts a confession to this murder.
People like to jump on the fucking bandwagon when there's something sensational and celebrity-like, you know? But just because everybody and their brother wants to confess to the murder of these two gentlemen, this takes away from, you know, what I think to be the more powerful defense of Henry.
Something to the effect of, we coming at that Jeep. Can't remember the quote. You're going to hear about it.
Can't remember the quote because it's not that important. That's the kind of message you get with that kind of statement.
And essentially it was a confession to involvement in the murders. It took them a year and a half to go and talk to him. They knew about it a year and a half earlier. It took them a year and a half to go and talk to him. Why do you do that unless you've already concluded that you know who committed the crime? You've already determined.
Yeah, because nobody else was fucking there.
Who your defendant will.
And I don't mean to make fun of the defense lawyer, because he's got a tough job on this case, without a doubt. I mean, you've got a situation where you've got an uphill battle as this defense lawyer. There is a mountain of evidence that Melly was there and was there at the time of the killing, and, you know, that people lied about it and they did it together. And not only is he looking at prison time, but he's looking at the death penalty. And I have not handled the death penalty. We don't have that in Minnesota. We have it federally, and I've never handled a death penalty case federally. But it's you know, the client's life is in your hands. So you got to pull all the stops. So I'm goofing around a little bit on him, but he's got a tough job. And to have another guy's life in your hands is a very heavy responsibility.
And when they go to this young man and ask him, well, actually before, this is a year and a half before, they said, oh, we've determined that he was just trying to start an internet beef to advance his career. Who told him that? Without talking to a soul. So it took them a year and a half to go down there and track him down. And when they do go and track him down, they say, hey, did you commit the murder? No. Were you in the area? No. Where were you? Well, I could have been at work. At work where? Any one of 3 places. Okay, could you give me a work schedule? As though that would prove anything. He says, well, I can get it now. Oh, no, don't worry about it. Just email it to me. Really? And he doesn't even do that. There is no report that he even follows up and sends them an email of this mysterious work schedule proving that he wasn't at the location. They conclude, oh, he's not there, wasn't him, case closed. Is that how we do this now? That's not all. There are several other people who are potential suspects who were not tracked down. You are going to hear about them during the course of this trial. But beyond that,
see, when you go through each one of these, it makes Bortland like all the other ones. You know, he's just one of many, and as opposed to really honing in and really focusing on him.
3 years after arresting this young man and sticking him in a cell, the state looks at its case and says, "Oh man, this looks a little incompetent. Miramar Police seems to have botched this investigation," and they call the Broward Sheriff's Office and ask them to come and look at the investigation upon which this entire prosecution rests. And he looks at it, and he says he instantly knew he had to start from scratch. I think his words were, "It was the worst thing I had seen in my life."
Which, if you think about it, now this has gone through 2 law enforcement agencies, so it is probably got more reliability.
Sheriff's Office evaluating the work product of the Miramar Police Department. And we have problems with the Broward Sheriff's Office redo as well, but you're going to hear about that during the course of this trial.
One of the things, this happens all the time, especially when you have a small police force or a small county attorney's office or district attorney's office. You sometimes have the attorney general come in or a bigger department coming in to give assistance. That's not uncommon at all.
Ladies and gentlemen, the murder of anybody and the murder of these two young men was a tragedy. You're not here to solve a crime. That's their job, and they have watched it. Jurors often get confused as to their mission. You can't do a job.
This is actually kind of interesting. It's not often that I watch another person's opening statement, sorry. It's interesting to see everybody's got a different style. Everybody's got a different communication method. And you got to really make sure that it's personal to you. You can't really copy somebody else's style.
Unless you know what that job is. Every civil society needs to have a prosecutorial arm prosecuting crimes and offenses. That's a noble pursuit. There's nothing wrong with that. And every country does it. In some countries, the prosecutor decides who the person is, they send a cop to go arrest him, they throw him in jail, that's the end of it. We don't do that in this country. What we do is we ask, are you sure about what you're talking about? That's the purpose of this proceeding. You're not here to judge Mr. Demons. You're here to judge the sufficiency of the state's case. That is your assignment. You're not here for a show to see who you like more.
So what he's talking about is the burden of proof. The burden of proof is on the government. In every jurisdiction, everywhere in this country, you have the presumption of innocence. And it's up to the government to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. If they can't do that, I don't care if they're guilty or not. They should not be found guilty. And that's what he's getting at here.
There are two grades, beyond a reasonable doubt and not guilty. A+, everything else is an F. There's no A's, there's no A minuses.
See, finally she spoke up. I've been waiting for an objection because this whole opening has been an argument.
You are akin to an FDA lab. Imagine a company saying, we're going to put on the market fat-free milk. And the lab?
This is argument. This is not appropriate.
Their mission is to determine whether or not there is fat in the milk. And what do they look for? They don't look for milk. They look for fat. The state is telling you they have a state that is free of reasonable doubt. You're not here looking for proof. You're here looking for doubt. And if you're off looking for the wrong thing, you're going to miss what you are here to look for. They have no motive. Their entire case is hinged upon the technology of a phone they claim to have been in Mr. DeMons' possession. What they fail to tell you is that they have come across evidence that Mr. DeMons got out of that car before this incident. They ignore that because it's not consistent with their theory.
That statement right there undercuts all the other people that he said were possible suspects, with the exception of Cortland. And it puts Melly in the car in his opening statement.
What they fail to tell you is that phone comes back to the name of somebody other than Jamal Demons. What they forgot to tell you is that their own witness will tell you that yes, that phone and Mr. Williams' phone and a number of other phones were all in the same account, and all of the people in the house used to use them interchangeably. But they're assigning it to him because that is consistent with their theories. They don't follow leads. They have no motive. Investigation was botched. The investigation, as a matter of fact, is still going on as we speak, up to a couple months ago. Yet they're here telling you they have proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and what you're still investigating for. The job of the state is to prove it beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. And if you're a reasonable person and you have doubt, that's reasonable doubt. There's a song called Things That Make You Go, If you say, that's reasonable doubt. You do not. Ms. Bradley is charming. She's good at her job in some respects. But this is not a popularity.
You know, I was given a closing argument in the case, and at that point I knew I had the case won. The prosecutor gets up and he gives a rebuttal and he says, boy, Mr. Rivers is a really good lawyer, blah, blah, blah. I mean, why would you do that? I mean, it's like, you should really believe this guy because he's good.
But this is not a popularity contest. We don't give, hey, good effort. We don't give participation awards. This man's life is hanging in the balance. And if there is a scintilla of reasonable doubt, you must have the courage to speak up and say so. You're not here to judge him. You're here to judge the sufficiency of their case. They have a big task in front of them. We should probably get to it.
Now, it's just as a mere, that's when you said at the end of this case, we are going to, it'll be demonstrated the state has failed to meet their burden, and we are going to demand that you find Mr. Demons not guilty. I mean, he didn't ask you. You've got a big task. You better get to it. I mean, it's kind of folksy. I like it, but I would have asked for a not guilty. So this has been our reaction to the part two, the defense opening statement. Now let's get to the meat of it. So we'll keep following the trial, and this is going to be a long trial because there's a whole bunch of different parts to it, and whether it's the technology, the forensics, the testimony, and they're going to, especially when Bortland testifies, that's going to be some fireworks. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer. I am controlled 100% and completely by our content genius, Michael Rivers. That was him. Oh my God, he speaks. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, and sign up for Patreon, for Christ's sake. See you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. So I guess who am I talking to? I'm talking to anybody who's trying to support somebody on drugs. I'm talking to somebody who's thinking about doing drugs, young people. I'm talking to people who are doing drugs. If you're doing drugs, try to get some help. It's so dangerous. Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, your personal board-certified criminal defense lawyer, coming to you with my pearl-handled pistol cufflinks and our content genius, Michael Rivers, who is behind the camera, behind the microphone, and in front of the camera. How does that work? Michael, say hello.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm a little sick. My voice is a little raspy right now, but just we're back in action. We're going to keep moving from here. I just want to add, make sure you go to clrbrucerivers.com.
So today we're reacting to the news of the death of Rich Homie Quan. Rich Homie Quan was a pretty notorious rapper, famous rapper. And he was found dead in his home as a result of an apparent overdose. Some facts are still coming out, but this is brought this is brought about the issue. Michael and I were talking about this earlier today about famous rappers and people that have died from overdoses, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. And that's what this focus is going to be on this episode, is that about drugs, about overdoses, and the impact of that on families. So, but before we get to that, this is brought to you by eForms.com. eForms.com is a very effective way to protect yourself in any kind of legal situation where you need some documentation of what's going on. For example, you sell a car, you buy a car, you need to have that documentation that you actually own the car. And you can't just get the title, because what if you sell a car to somebody and they don't transfer the title? Well, guess what? You might be on the hook for parking tickets or this or that, or if it's used in a crime. So if you have a bill of sale and they don't do it, you can force that. You can force that sale. Force a transfer the title, or if you need a power of attorney. eForms has been an incredible supporter of CLR, and so we want you to support eForms.com. For example, if your grandma's in the basement and she's got some great business idea where she's crocheting some sexy lingerie, you got to get that online. So you do a business agreement. Whatever kind of form you need, go to eForms.com, whether your grandma's in the basement or not. eForms.com, a very effective way to avoid the high cost of a lawyer and a very easy way to protect yourself. Oh, my ride's here. Okay. So this, let's just talk about what the most prevalent drug is out there right now, and that's fentanyl. Fentanyl is everywhere, and there's so many people dying from a fentanyl overdose. It's cut with, it's cheaper to get than heroin, and they can cut it, and they tell you it's one thing and it's usually something else, but it's way, way more lethal.
Can I add something on that?
You don't have to raise your hand.
Okay. I just don't want to interrupt you. So right now, what's really happening is all of these precursors, chemicals, are being shipped from China to the cartels in Mexico, right? And so, it's really for acetylfentanyl, the longer name, and then they're being made. So there's some kind of loopholes around what's going on, but they're flooding, and it's so cheap and it's so dangerous. And they're adding xylazine, which is tranq, and which is not meant for humans, that cause lesions, and they also have carfentanil, which is 10 times stronger than fentanyl.
So 5 years ago, I wasn't getting any of these cases, or there maybe one or two, it's against the law to sell, give away, barter, or otherwise distribute a drug to another person. It's also against the law if they get that drug and they overdose on it and die. And here it's murder 3, it's death by a controlled substance. So if you're in the chain of distribution, you could be on the hook for a murder case. And nowadays, especially because of the fentanyl, and you'd agree with me on this, Michael, that the fentanyl is so damn dangerous. It is more addictive, it is more deadly than heroin, and I am seeing more and more murder 3 charges coming from people. They're going after whoever, and let's say you buy the drug and you give it to your buddy, and he overdoses and dies. You're on the hook for his murder, even though you were just a couple of guys doing dope together.
Just like that case that just happened out at Kansas City Chiefs fans. Remember we did a video on that?
Yeah.
The chemist?
Yeah, the chemist, And so if he's responsible for giving his buddies drugs and they overdose, which they did, he's a good-looking guy. Born DeQuantes Labar, Rich Homicwan made his mainstream breakthrough in 2013 with the catchy tracks Type of Way and YG's My Fella. I'm not going to say that. Though he gained traction in the hometown of Atlanta, so he's a very popular guy. Michael says he's one of his favorite. They're not saying what his cause of death was, but we suspect that it was an overdose. So that led us to kind of look at other famous people that have died. Matthew Perry was just in the news, for dying from a ketamine overdose.
Yeah, in a hot tub, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but he had a lot in his system, I guess.
Yeah.
But let's go back a few years, just a few years. Coolio, fentanyl, heroin overdose, and methamphetamine. Aaron Carter, remember Aaron Carter, drowned in a bathtub after inhaling drugs. Michael Williams.
Michael K. Williams, yeah.
Michael K. Williams.
From The Wire.
From The Wire, yeah, right, from The Wire. Fentanyl, heroin, cocaine overdose. Who else we got?
Angus Cloud. Mention Angus Cloud. That's a big one.
Angus Cloud, multiple drugs, methamphetamine, cocaine, fentanyl, and benzodiazepine. John Belushi from the Saturday Night Live. It goes back over and over and over again. I can't stress enough how dangerous drugs are. Even if it doesn't kill you now, and it really is so preventable. I've never seen anything that takes your freedom, takes your health, takes your money, but goddamn it, I have to have more of it. And it's whether it's methamphetamine or heroin or fentanyl or lean or whatever the drug of choice. Some of these guys are dying from or they die from complications of extended drug use. DMX, what did DMX die of? DMX, drug-induced heart attack. So this is a rapper from my era.
Love DMX, but also mentioned Juice WRLD too. He's not on there, but I can explain the
Juice
situation.
WRLD is on here.
Oh, he is? Okay.
Yeah, that's Juice WRLD. Died in 2019, rapper. Official cause of death was seizures induced by acute oxycodone and codeine intoxication. I had a client who was a deputy, a sheriff's deputy, and he got busted because he was going into people's homes pretending to investigate the theft of controlled substances. And so, I need to check your medicine cabinet. Who the fuck does that? And so he'd go in and he would take some of their drugs. And then he was doing oxys like nobody's business. And guess what? When he'd go into withdrawal, he would go into these seizures and he broke both his fucking shoulders. Both of his shoulders. And he lost, guess what? He's not a deputy anymore. But it's tragic. And that just goes to show you what a drug overdose or just a drug addiction does to somebody. Michael, how many people have you, in the last 10 years, how many people do you know that have died of an overdose?
Personally, so let's see. Yeah, around at least 5 to 7 people that I was very
Michael,
close.
I think it's more than that. I think you've known like 12 to 15 people that have died of.
Oh, I was talking about the last 3 years. But
okay, in the last 10 years, you've probably known about 10 to 15 people that have died of an overdose.
Yeah, that I had a very close relationship with.
So, and here's the shit about this. A lot of times, there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it. You can try to be supportive, but guess what you do? Guess what they do when you try to be supportive? They lie to you, and they take you up wrong. In other words, they come after you, and you get bad attitudes. And no matter what you do, it's very difficult to be around somebody that's got an addiction that doesn't want to listen to you.
They have to want it. They have to want it themselves. It has to come from those. There's only the most frustrating thing. Like I've had friends with, I've been through periods of sobriety, like serious like rehabs, going to meetings and stuff like that, and trying to get my friends to come with, like a friend in particular who was very close to the edge of death, right? And you could just tell I would have put money on it if there was a betting system that he was going to be the next person to die. In the last 2 months, the last two people, But it's just like you can do as much as you can, bring him to meetings, do whatever. They need to want it for themselves.
And you're sober now, right?
Yeah, I'm sober now.
So it really is incredible, and I'm going to speak to you guys who are out there doing drugs. First of all, who gets busted in drug cases? It's never the big guys making the big money. It's the runners, it's the people doing the drugs. And guess what happens? They tell 3 friends, and then they tell 3 friends, and then they tell, in other words, they snitch on 3 people. And then all these drug cases, they're all built on snitches. It's hard to know what to say. When you have somebody who's a famous rapper who's probably got no money issues, or maybe does, I don't know. But it doesn't matter. I mean, look at Whitney Houston. One of the most beautiful women you've ever seen in your life, one of the most talented women you've ever seen, and she goes down the shithole because of drugs. She fucking drowns in a bathtub. Her daughter drowns in a bathtub. Aaron Carter drowned in a bathtub. I mean, what the fuck is it with people and drugs and bathtubs?
Jim Morrison drowned in a bathtub. But also, Heath Ledger. I was gonna bring up Heath Ledger. You remember him?
Yeah.
The biggest role in his life, contradictory to anything he ever did, right? The incredible performance in The Dark Knight as the Joker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Overdoses on benzos and opiates,
Prince, Elvis, Janis Joplin. Seymour Hersh. No, it's not Seymour Hersh.
The Philip Seymour Hoffman you're thinking of.
Yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yep.
I don't want to start bad rumors. But these are people who are incredibly talented. And, you don't have to be, a Hollywood star. Just the average people are dying like crazy from this fentanyl. I mean, in northern Minnesota, there have been 300 deaths over the last several years. 300. 300. It's just, the fentanyl is a scourge. It's an absolute scourge. I had the daughter of the mayor of a suburb of Minneapolis died in a Burger King parking lot from a heroin overdose. I had another guy who was just burglarizing homes after homes because he was jonesing for money to get for heroin. So, you got to love the people that are in your life, that are on drugs. And if you're on drugs, you got to get off drugs. And it's easier said than done. Especially if it's one of the kind of drugs that is just, if you're a young, and it sounds so fucking preachy, and I don't want to sound like, an old man telling you what to do, but guess what? I'm an old fucking man, and I'm going to tell you what to do. Don't do drugs. It's the old Nancy Reagan. I mean, it's a very simple, message. Don't do drugs. But it's true. What is my main message on our channel? Main message is build, right? Build, build, build. Build your future, build your education, build your relationships, build your finances, build, build, build. Every day, just a little bit. And guess what happens when you do drugs? It knocks those pillars back. It knocks those, because you do things that you wouldn't normally do. Oh, I'll just do this, It's like when people steal, When people steal from an employer or something, they think, I'll just take this $100 and I'll put it back. We did a video once on this one woman who was constantly stealing, and it's just, they do that over and over again. There was a gal who stole from from the country club that I belong to. Now that sounds like an old rich white guy, right? And take that back. There was a gal that would steal a little bit from this country club, and I'm sure she started out, I'll just do a little bit. And then all of a sudden, before you knew it, several years later, she's up to $2.3 million. And drugs is kind of the same way, in the sense that you try it once or twice, and it's not something you'd normally do, but when you lose that inhibition, that fear, where you're just going to try it, and then all of a sudden, guess what happens? Then you start cutting corners on other parts of your life, right? You start cutting corners on on whether I'm going to drive while I do it, or whether I'd steal to feed my habit, or whether I would fuck over a partner, for this. Like either just being late, for dinner, for your family, or just not showing up at all, or just disrespecting people that you love. I got a good buddy of mine, his son is having trouble, and, going off on the mom for no reason, just because they're on drugs. Your personality changes, your life changes, and it can knock away everything you could ever hope to build. So I guess who am I talking to? I'm talking to anybody who's trying to support somebody on drugs. I'm talking to somebody who's thinking about doing drugs, young people. I'm talking to people who are doing drugs. If you're doing drugs, try to get some help. It's so fucking dangerous. And you don't hear anybody online or anywhere preaching about this stuff. I preach about a couple different things. I'm so anti-drug. My dad scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. He was a fireman, and they would go to. He was a first responder, so they would go to emergencies and these overdoses all the time. And he made my sister and I watch this video, and it scared the shit out of me. That's why I couldn't do drugs. Do I drink a little bit? Yeah, I do, but it's in moderation, and it's, like with dinner, that kind of thing. But do I do heroin? No. Do I do fentanyl? No. Do I do any kind of drugs? No. And it's just tough. We're going to just listen to just so we put a face to what we're talking about and who we're talking about here. And this is a very successful guy, Rich Homie Quan type of way. This is what he's been saying. My fella's been hustling, trying to make him something. Ain't no telling what he'll do for the paper. Money, obviously. Souffle, I'm straight. I stake my plate. I have steak on my plate. Sade, I'm a smooth operator. Hey, that's my era. But he's basically saying he's made it. And look at where he is now. 6 feet underground. Drugs are a huge business. And there's such a downside. It's such a huge business, and there's such a downside. First of all, if you're dealing drugs, there's really no safe way to deal drugs these days, unless you're really insulated, and you can't really be that insulated unless you're out of the country. The cops, meaning the feds, the DEA, and task forces all over the country, they get one guy, and they say, okay, you snitch on 3 people. And then they go to these 3 people. And then, they metastasize. They've got networks of snitches that they pay, and they've been paying for years. There's really no safe way to deal long term. I know there's going to be people who say, oh, I've been doing this for a long time. Don't be saying that on my channel, because that'll be self-snitching, okay? But it's really important for you all to build. You see this guy here, and now you see what he looks like now. Eyes are closed, mouth is sewn shut, laying in a casket, or cremated, one of the two. And there's no more life. No more life. You can't go back and undo the damage that drugs will do to you, whether it's to you or somebody else. And the guidelines for some of these drug crimes federally, it's just out of this world. It is nothing to get 188 to 235 on some of these cases. It just isn't.
And that's months, by the way.
Yeah, 188 months to 235. 235 months is almost 20 years. That is a murder sentence. So, and if you get a second or third one, you can be subject to mandatory minimum penalties that are out of this world. 10, 20 years to life. Life. Can you imagine? I had a case in South Dakota, federal drug case. I knew we were going to lose when we tried it, and my client would not take a deal, and he would not snitch. I don't represent snitches, so that was fine by me. But he could have entered a plea early on and gotten a mandatory 20. He insisted on going to trial, and now he got a life sentence. And one of his priors was a very minor drug case. but it was still a drug case. And they used those predicates to enhance the mandatory minimum. So whether you're talking about the crimes and the punishment, or you talk about the health effects and the effects on your life, I don't know how strongly I can word this, but don't fucking deal and don't fucking use. Because if it will interfere with every single part of your life. It'll interfere with your relationship with your mother. Would you want it? Unless your mother's doing heroin too, which I've seen that before. I've seen, and I can't tell you how many times I've had to write in a memorandum while I'm asking for a leniency that my client's mother and family were on drugs, and that's how my client grew up. But the average person, whether it's no matter where they live, is not going to want to do fucking drugs in front of their mother. So then what do you have to do? You have to lie to your mother. You know, you don't want your younger siblings to do any drugs, right? So you have to, I'm just saying, you can't go to work high. You're not supposed to anyway. You know, you can't go to school high. And guess what? 90% of the people who do a lot of drugs either drop out of school or they don't go to school at all. And so, God, this death of Homie Kwan.
Rich Homie Kwan, yeah.
This death of Rich Homie Kwan is such an eye-opener for everybody. Take a look at all these people who are dying. You know, if you go to...
Wikipedia. Wikipedia.
Was that Wikipedia? Go to Wikipedia. List of deaths from drug overdose and intoxication. And it has the list of, and it lists all these different people. Going back to 1764, Isaac Cruikshank
took 4 grains of
alcohol.
morphine.
You know, starting to go way back. So, you know, and the other thing is it can induce suicide in some people. Just, I don't know how much more strongly I can word this, but don't fucking do drugs. Don't sell drugs. It's all short money, and if you are on drugs, get some help. Get sober. Do what you gotta do. But you can build on your sobriety every little bit. Go to a meeting. Get a sponsor. Find somebody in your life that's supportive. You know, and if you don't have anybody, find somebody. Get on fucking Tinder and find somebody supportive. I'm sure there's sober people out there on Tinder. You know, I mean, or Bumble or whatever. There's got to be. Go ahead.
You can set that as a preference in some of these apps that like don't smoke, don't drink. Yeah, you can set it filter as an app as a.
Do what you got to do to get sober. Stay sober. Contrary to popular belief, I don't like repeat clients. I love success stories. I love it when a client comes to me after having really serious charges, and I've done this a shit ton, where all of a sudden law enforcement is involved. You know, they get charged with a crime. And they wind up getting sober because they know there's no way to beat the case. So they have to put a shine on themselves. In other words, get sober, go to treatment, go to AA, get a job, go to church, get your surroundings changed so you're not around the drug people. And then, and then we try to stretch the case out as long as we can. And guess what? You have somebody that's changed from a cocoon to a butterfly. In other words, they've changed their life around, and law enforcement sometimes will save lives because of that. You know what I mean? Law enforcement intervention a lot of times will save a life. And so if you are in that situation, get some help. Absolutely get some help.
Final words I'd like to say, for anyone out there that's struggling, I would suggest 2 books. One is by a neuropharmacologist, or he's like doctorate level. He actually went through addiction and overcame it himself. And if you're very technical and very anti-AA or whatever, read through that book. It will help you. Also,
What's the book?
Biology of Desire. That's the name of the book. Biology of Desire. It explains exactly what goes on during addiction and how habits like it. I'm not going to get into it, but it has to do with feedback loops and how to break these habits. And then Johan Hari, he's been to 50 different countries studying drug addiction, and he has this famous quote. I'm gonna butcher this, but sobriety or addiction, sobriety is not the absence of drugs. Sobriety is the presence of connection, or something like that. And
Well, this is just some friendly advice from two guys. We're just in Minneapolis. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. Michael's got 1 year left of law school. We are, we care about our fans, and our fans' families, and everybody's got friends and people that have struggle with addiction. So make sure that you take care of everybody the way we're talking about. Okay?
Before we forget, I just want to add, make sure you go to CLRBruceRivers.com. Update on the hoodies. Everyone that pre-ordered, thank you. They're being screen printed in Orange County, and they're almost done. They'll be shipped here very shortly. They'll be done by today, shipped by tomorrow. So we'll have those in, get those to you. Thank you for the pre-orders. You got a special deal.
Bruce Rivers, your board-certified criminal defense lawyer. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon, order some merch on CLRBruceRivers.com. We'll see you next time on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.